Welcome. You made it. We made it, I should say. Show number 1, episode 1 of Professional Rookies. I'm one of your hosts, Rene Ingoglia. I'll be alongside my good friend, first person I ever met when I moved to Orlando, Brian Ferreira. And I should say Detective Brian Ferreira, because
that's me.
Brian's still active. In case you don't know me, I am a college football analyst for ESPN, and I am a retired police detective. So, Brian, you'll get to retired in a few years.
6 more years, but not counting? Like I'm counting. I worked out the numbers the other day. I want to say it's about 1,200 and something days, but
not that you're counting.
No, not at all.
So, yeah, thanks for joining us. So this show originally, it was going to be, because obviously two detectives, we're going to get into some true crime, and then we figured let's expand it a little bit. Obviously my background with football and ESPN, and as a player, I like to say I had a cup and a half of coffee in the NFL and my playing days at UMass and college. So it's going to be kind of a mixture of some true crime, behind the scenes of law enforcement, behind the scenes of broadcasting, and just trying to be fun and informative for you guys. And we're trying to keep the shows like 45, 50 minutes, weekly. And so for episode number 1, we're going to call this The Beginning. And Brian thought it'd be a really good idea to let you guys as listeners kind of know us, learn about us. And it kind of made sense. At first, I was like, it's kind of narcissistic. But it makes sense in that, when you listen to a podcast or you watch a show on TV, you always kind of wonder, who is that person, where they came from. And perfect example, Kirk Herbstreit's the face of college football, and he's been that on College Game Day for over 25 years. He just did an autobiography. So you kind of can get to know him. Sure. So kind of the first couple shows will kind of be like an audiobook of getting to know us. And so Brian, and obviously Brian's a great interviewer, usually interviewing people that perpetrated murder. But this time he'll just be interviewing me, and we'll go back and forth. So,
is there anything you want to tell me, Rene, before we get started?
I can tell you unequivocally, anything I've ever done in my life, the statute of limitations has run its course, so I feel pretty good.
Okay.
I feel pretty good.
All right.
And if you hear some bumping or it sounds like we're get preoccupied, it's because we have a lot of dogs here. We're at my home studio, where I actually do some ESPN college football games, and so we have the podcast studio set up here, and of course, you can't shut the door to the studio without the dogs scratching and barking at the door. So they're in here. Some are laying down. Some are nosing us. So we're a dog family here I affectionately call my house the Gridiron Ranch. So, but so that's kind of it. So hopefully you guys will enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's been a thing. This idea has been kind of germinating for a long time now. I think I said to Rene, I don't know how many years, you need to do a podcast. So finally we're here. And we've changed the idea of this a few times, and I think what we finally decided on is going to really be the informative and entertaining thing that we want to present to everybody. As I almost spilled my coffee because Murphy's nosing me here. But it's always best to start at the beginning, and I think that's where we're at. So, Rene, we want to. I know you. I've known you for pretty much my whole law enforcement career. You're one of my best friends, 20 years plus. I think that you have probably one of the most interesting stories of anybody that I've ever met. And I'm not just saying that, it's the truth. And anybody that talks to you for more than 5 minutes knows that. Okay, so, I think the best way to begin is to go back to your beginning. Football is a passion of yours. It's not everything you are, but football is a big part of who you are. So, it's interesting to see, when you first meet, people first meet you, the first thing they see, hey, you play professional football, and that's, you don't get to do that every day, to talk to somebody like that. So let's talk about how you got started. Where did it all begin?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So I was born and raised in Rochester, New York. I'm the youngest of 5. I have 3 older brothers. And so, I was always like, tagging along with them and, tackle football, and they didn't take it easy on me. And I just think that's kind of where it all came from. And I grew up in a time, and I'm going to be 50 this year, so I was born in 72. So in the late 70s, early 80s, there was no specialization like the world we live in today. Whatever season it was a sport you played. If it was football season, you played football. If it was basketball, you played basketball. Baseball, you played baseball. So I played all 3 sports.
Sure.
And so that's really where it started all. And really, we didn't have video games. No. Obviously, we didn't have computers. We didn't have any of that stuff. So you're just out playing. And so I give that advice to people all the time too. They're like, oh, what should my son or daughter do? And I said, just let them be a kid.
Yeah.
Get them outside, let them playing, let them climb trees, let them run, let them jump. I mean, that's where you can become an athlete.
I think we lose track of the fact that this is all supposed to be fun at the end of the day. I think, now academics or sports, you name it, these kids are being pushed, we've talked about the signing day things that you see, these high schools and stuff, but that's another topic for another day. But so, you're playing tackle football with your older brothers, and an Italian family, I'm sure they're not exactly, patting you on the head inside either. It's probably a lot of noogies. And,
no two-hand touch, I can tell you that.
So when does the career start? When does the football career start?
So I didn't play. I played 1 year of Pop Warner, and I loved it, right? And so then, kind of fast forward into junior high school. So I went to a high school, Eastridge High School was my first high school in Rochester, New York, and they weren't the best high school. They were in this long losing streak. I think I've told this story before, but so in junior high, I was in 8th grade, and my goal was to make the junior varsity team. And so when training camp starts, the JV and the varsity, they bring all the players in, freshman through senior, they bring them in. Well, so I was in the junior high school, a wing of the high school, being in 8th grade, but, I got to go to training camp.
So let me ask you this question. I don't want to cut you off, but you said 8th grade wing. So some high schools are different. I know when I went to high school, it was 9 through 12. So when you went to high school, was it 7 through 12?
Well, so no, it was 9 through 12, the normal high school, and then they had a wing of Eastridge Junior High School, which was just 7th and 8th grade.
But it was in the same
building, but it was a whole separate wing. It was shut off.
So you had access to the high school athletics.
Correct.
Okay.
If you made any of the teams, which was very unheard of back then,
but
a little different now. So so when I was in 8th grade, I was like, okay, I want to make the junior varsity team. That would be awesome as an 8th grader, and go to training camp. And in New York State at the time, and I don't know if it's changed now, if you were a junior higher like I was, to be able to play with kids in high school, you had to pass like a physical fitness test. It was like squat thrusts and push-ups and sit-ups and shuttle runs. And I'll never forget. So we were in training camp, and I was doing really well. And the athletic director came to get me, he's going to bring me to the gym to do these tests. And I remember the head coach, guy by the name of George Giordano, my first head coach. He's still up in Rochester now. He's retired as a head coach, but he's helping out as an assistant, some different programs. And I remember him telling the athletic director, varsity, and I just didn't really know what he was talking about. So I went and I did these tests and shuttle run and all this stuff, and I did awesome. I killed it. And when the coach was telling the AD varsity, he meant test them for varsity, because there was different levels from JV to varsity. And so long story short, I played varsity. They took me on the varsity football team as an 8th grader.
I want to go back.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, see, we shouldn't let people glom over that. I mean, you're playing varsity football, in 8th grade, so you're not even that mature. The maturity level is not there and everything else, but you're there. Now you say you had a goal in mind to play JV. Like, what were you doing to get to that point? Like, because everybody that knows Rene knows, like, he's a competitor. You are an absolute competitor. What were you doing to get ready for that?
So, I mean, at that time, I talked about growing up just playing. That's all I really did. Like, I really hadn't, at that point in my life, 8th grade, really didn't get into weightlifting yet.
Sure.
It was really new. But I always just was athletic, and I played.
Right.
And so it's kind of principle of specificity. If you want to get good at basketball, play basketball. If you want to get good at baseball, play baseball.
Sure.
So, and that's all I did. I played. And I would, back then it was, you go to any local basketball court, and there was a pickup game.
Sure.
And you jumped in, and you didn't matter if their kids were 5-6 years older than you played. That's what I did. So really, that's all I did to get ready, because at that time I really, there was no workout programs per se.
Right.
And so, so I made the varsity team, and I ended up starting. And so let me backtrack too. So, when I tell this story, everyone says, and even back then, so Eastridge High School at the time had the longest losing streak for varsity football in the state of New York. I think they had lost I don't even know what it was, 24 straight games, something like that. So it dated back like 3 years. So everyone's like,
So
well, yeah, you made the varsity, but they stink. And my response to them was, well, but we're playing good teams. So it's not like I'm not playing against good teams,
I was
you
just
know?
thinking, like, screw it. We'll take the 8th grader. Come on,
Yeah.
kid. Let's go. We'll give you a shot.
Well,
here.
and Coach Giordano was a new coach, new
Got
coaching
nothing to
staff. So I started as an 8th grader, and I was like the 4th string running back because obviously that's what I went on to play professionally at UMass as a running back. But I started at safety as an 8th grader.
Really?
And I was doing good.
Starting.
So I started at safety. I was like the 3rd or 4th string running back. And I was just kind of, having fun playing, and I was, for an 8th grader, I was a little bigger. I want to say I was probably 5'8".
Okay.
140 pounds
Yeah.
in 8th grade, 145 pounds. So I was big enough. And again, the test that they made me do to say that I could play, and you brought up the word maturity, are you physically mature enough? That's why you have to pass those tests. But, yeah, so I was playing, and we were still losing, but we were playing a lot better.
Right.
And we get towards the end of the season, and sure enough, there's injuries here, there. And Coach Giordano says, hey, you're gonna play running back. So basically, I became the starting running back. And there's a picture in this office studio we're doing right here, and Brian, that's the first varsity touchdown I ever scored.
Okay.
So obviously, I was in 8th grade.
Right.
And I don't know what photographer took it. It's black and white. And that was I'll never forget. It was an 85-yard kickoff return at a school across town in Rochester called Greece Olympia. Really? So that's the first touchdown I ever scored. And after that game, and that was towards the latter part of the season, they came to me and said, hey, you're gonna start at running back too. And of course, there had been some injuries.
Right.
And my first game at running back, we played a really good school in the Rochester area, and some people think it's the Buffalo area because it's between us, called Batavia High School. And we lost that game, but was very competitive. And I think I had like an 85-yard touchdown reception, and you ran the ball, and so I did really well. So just kind of fast forward, last game of the season, I think we were 0-10, so that streak was really going now. I mean, I think that streak was like 30 games or whatever, and we played a high school in Rochester, Brighton High School, and last play, so I ended up rushing for 100 yards, and the last play of the game, I caught a touchdown pass, like a 7-yard touchdown pass. I'll never forget the quarterback, guy by the name of Jim Ingoglia, good Italian.
Yeah.
He's
an Irish guy, right?
Yeah. And I caught the pass. It was literally the last play of the game.
Right.
And we won 21-20. And the streak was over. I mean, I felt like we won the Super Bowl,
Right.
And so that kind of started my varsity career.
Okay. So, and that's your 8th grade year.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure there was a lot more to that. So, you guys win that game. Is that the last game of the season?
That's
right?
the last game of the season.
So then, okay. So lessons learned, 8th grader playing varsity. To me, I played high school sports. Well, I more was a spectator on the sidelines, but I wore a uniform. But, that just is almost unheard of. I mean, I've just never heard that before. So what lessons were learned? Was it an eye-opener for you, or was it something that you fit in pretty well? Like, did you feel comfortable, was there a learning curve?
I felt comfortable, and it's one of those things that if you can play, they're going to treat you the same.
Okay.
Right. And so as I look back at it now, I mean, again, I was just an 8th grade kid loving football and just wanting to play, And again, I played football, basketball, and baseball. I played them all. And I think that 8th grade year, I ended up playing JV basketball and JV baseball. But yeah, so I mean, it's hard to say what lessons I learned, only that it gave me, I will say this, it gave me confidence that, holy cow,
you can do it.
I can do it at a young age.
Yeah.
And so now I started thinking about, of course, when you're really little, when I was real little, I had 2 lifelong goals.
Right.
Play in the NFL, which every kid does.
Right.
And I wanted to be a police officer. Those were the 2 things. And once I got older, though, the NFL thing kind of was just, I didn't really talk about it much or really think about it. But then it was college. I wanted to play Division I football.
Okay.
And I wanted to get a scholarship. So that kind of was my goal. So that 8th grade season kind of told me, okay, I can do this. But now, as this story progresses, things get really interesting as I become a freshman and move forward in my high school career.
Was there a lot of hate